I think there's a bit of a generational gap on like the direct mail stuff, and obviously there's new capabilities and innovations, but there's a gap in knowledge, I think, for a lot of us that have grown up in more the digital. So now it's like, what does it actually mean?
First of all, I want to welcome everybody to our first episode of the Directworx podcast, Let's Be Direct. My name's Dan Shotlander, and I'm an employee of Directworx. I'd like to introduce Lane from Directworx and Michael Turcsanyi from Goose Digital is our special guest today. We wanted to talk a little bit about, first of all, who we are. Directworx is a traditional direct mail house that's kind of become something very different from that. So we started about 25 years ago, basically in the basement of a house, and we've been building our business steadily for that time. And we've learned through our years that we needed to branch out into other areas other than just direct mail, and we had a lot of talent on board that helped us kind of grow that. So we've moved on from traditional direct mail, basically stuffing envelopes and putting labels on flyers and so on. We now offer full scale printing. We have a full data processing area and service that provides all kinds of direct mail related and other related services. Basically, we've boiled down to where we really have three lines of business. But we really want to focus on just two of them here. And the main line of business is the targeted direct mail marketing, which we have customers from all over Canada for. And then we also do another line of business, which is we call it Directworx, which is a billing image rendering capability and automated workflow. So we integrate with large billing systems such as hydro companies or telecom companies, and we take the data, and we're the guys that, sorry to tell everybody, but we're the guys that get that mail to you, be it digitally, email, or physically. So basically we've kind of expanded that now, and we're getting more and more sophisticated with our offerings. We're getting all over the U.S. We have customers right across North America for the Directworx side, but we really integrate what we've learned in direct mail, and we're trying to take those learnings and push them into successful campaigns for customers anywhere from hospital foundations to large manufacturers to dealer networks. So overall, we've been kind of trying to get ahead of the curve and look at ways we can leverage our talents and work with customers who've been wonderful in terms of pushing us to learn new technologies and automate our workflows and reduce effort in integrating with them. And in that experience, we've been building a really great relationship with Canada Post, who's also been a key partner for us, as they too have been going through the same journey of moving away from just a traditional mom and pop or your typical letter carrier in the mail in the mail type of thing, or mail in the mailbox kind of thing. So as we've gone through that journey, one of the topics we wanted to talk about was basically, in this new digital age, how do we remain relevant, and how do we remain relevant, but talk about how successfully we've managed to jump that gap and integrating the digital with the physical, and some of the features that we have learned that make things happen. And we've brought Michael Turcsanyi to help us with that. So welcome, Michael, for that.
Thank you.
So I think if we were to kind of boil it down, we would say that the big picture is that the world has gone digital. We still, our customers, and we still grow significantly every year. We're doing more and more direct mail. So how do we continue with that growth? And what are the kinds of things that the average marketer that doesn't necessarily know much about direct mail, but seems to know more about the digital side, how can they kind of go back and circle back and start to integrate the two mediums, if you will, and make it into a successful campaign. And there's a lot of evidence to prove that proves out the success that you can have with doing this properly.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on, guys. The first podcast.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah. Well, we felt we needed to do something different. It's anybody can put content out there and hire somebody to write something, but kind of the culture of Directworx is we tend to be a little bit more authentic. We're a little we don't want to be canned. We don't want to be hiring everybody to do everything for us. I wanted to get down in front and center with our customers and potential customers and bring in some experts and some friends in the industry. Hey, we may do podcasts about something that has nothing to do with marketing, but it might be really relevant for your business. And so we want to create some value that way. And Michael is a veteran of the industry and owner of Goose Digital. And we're working with Michael on a number of projects, both for his customers and together we're collaborating for our own benefits, but independently of our customers. So.
Well, it's great. I mean, I think when we sat down, what had maybe been about a year ago, even potentially, and we looked at the idea of a podcast for Directworx, we thought, well, like you said, offering some value to the customer base and being able to provide a view really into not only the topics that we're going to discuss on this thing and that you guys are going to discuss on this thing to help others that are wrestling these problems to the ground, but also a bit of a window into the company. And you talk about being authentic, just being able to learn more about a partner or a potential partner that you might want to work with and know that they are actually people. They're not little robots running around doing work in the background, although I know that you guys have some pretty fantastic technology that you've created to take things to the next level, and I'm sure that'll be a lot of what gets talked about here. But at the end of the day, I think these are really great. Podcasts like this will be hopefully consumed on audio, but also on video, and there'll be a strategy that I think you guys have talked about to put these little clips and put the podcast on YouTube and put the little clips on LinkedIn and other areas where people can have little digestible blocks of content. So it's good. It's a good approach. And I know even right now, as we talked about physical plus digital, that we are exploring that very thing with you. But I think, maybe before we get into that, to talk a little bit about, an area that I do have some experience with around the average digital marketer or the typical digital marketer that you might say has kind of grown up over the last 10 years. And certainly, anybody that's even coming out of school right now is going to have probably even a wider gap. But I would think that gap goes back quite a ways. And I think about 10 years ago, most of, the focus really was into digital, and you almost had a combination of things going on. One hand, you had probably a bit too much focus on the tools and the call them technologies or the new channels, less so about the actual marketing message. It was more about, well, let's just try to exploit this PPC or this tool, and people weren't really thinking about, or the marketers weren't really trained really on how to put together a message that might work with their audience. And the other side of it was just not really probably having a more traditional marketing funnel, in their repertoire, because they were, I think one of the interesting things about the direct mail side, as we'll talk about, is that if you rewind to your point, Dan, 20 years, I mean, there's all kinds of different marketing activities or tactics that are mapped back to the marketing funnel that people were using direct mail for. Everything from brand advertising and just getting your brand out there to direct response and trying to convert. And I think that in and of itself was, I think, kind of lost on a lot of these early, or the marketers over the last 10 years are so deep into the tooling. They kind of forgot that there are actually a couple different stages of marketing here. And what you might be trying to do on your inbound or what you might be trying to do to generate leads is very similar to what we can do on direct mail. In fact, our direct response marketing. Obviously, those worlds are now kind of coming together and they're colliding. So doing them in a silo, certainly if you're doing your mail in a silo or your direct campaigns in a silo, probably not a good idea, right? You maybe get away with it a little bit on the digital side, but what we're going to go into is why you might want to bring those two worlds together.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, to your point, I think on its own, direct mail seems to have some capabilities that you just can't do with direct digital. It's just the very staying power of a direct mail piece, how long it lasts, the tactile impression that it leaves, the personalization, the fact that some organization has taken the time to put something on paper and put it into your mailbox and into your hands, and hopefully if they've done it right, it's relevant and it's it's timed correctly and the creative speaks to you. And if you follow the 4 or 5 major principles of direct mail, which are universal in a lot of respects in the marketing world, if you follow those, they do have the ability to break through. And so that this is where the digital noise we talk about a little bit. There is some erosion of response just due to a little bit of overwhelm. But the nice thing about direct mail, and I'm finding with our customers, is because there is an impression that there's a certain cost that might feel more than digital. If it's done correctly, if you amortize that cost over the presence that it creates in the domain of the recipient, you find that it's actually much more cost effective, because you get that repetitive. It's on the fridge, it's in the hands of it's being read by multiple members of the family. But again, you have to be ready to put the effort in to make sure that it is built in a way that resonates with the recipient.
And I think one of the things too, as of having conversations, a couple of weeks ago, we went to the Canada Post Ignite conference, and I had several conversations there, and there's a common theme where, people that weren't as familiar with the day-to-day of direct mail may think we're still doing, bulk mailings where you're targeting, an entire city or a province. And that's long gone. What we're doing is with direct mail today is super laser focused. The amount of personalization and relevance that you can put into a direct mail piece is crazy. We can really tailor that to what you know about your customer. So if you're gaining into information on your customer online, we can leverage that directly in your direct mail piece, and you don't have to mail 100,000 people. We can get really laser focused and put out a really relevant piece to 10,000 of those best customers. Where we can go in and for example, if a make, model, and color and vehicle, we can go in and change that entire postcard to match what someone's driving in their driveway today. We can even change the imagery on that postcard to match their postal code. So if they live in a rural area, we can variably grab an image that has, a vehicle in a rural setting versus someone that lives in more an urban setting, where we pull imagery to support that. So lots of different ways we can personalize, but it isn't mass distribution anymore. It's just very laser focused, and that's how digital can work with direct to really complement each other.
Yeah.
One of the some of the sort of digital plus direct stuff that we have been involved in has been where the user, or the end customer, receives a personalized offer, and then when they go and try to activate that offer on the web, they're seeing a very similar presentation. Can you guys talk a little bit about kind of what goes into that and what's kind of the reason for that?
Yeah, I think that the whole idea is it's just like having a brand for your business, right? You're not going to have brand. You don't want to create brand confusion. You want to make sure this is a smooth integration. So, the QR codes are also something. I just wanted to mention that because they seem to be on a bit of a comeback. They're more integrated into your devices. The readers are integrated into your cameras, and there's a very good reason for that, and it gives the marketer the ability to do just that, Mike. Is they can, you can create one brand or campaign guideline or basically marketing brief, and it's much easier now to make sure that you continue with that theme throughout. Although yes, we can do a lot of personalization within there, and in fact, if we want to take it to the nth degree, you can actually use those personal URLs to perhaps relate that landing page directly to the segment of the market that you've identified and spoken to in your direct mail. So bringing those things together, it creates so much better of a cohesive experience for the user, and I think, for the potential customer or the customer or the recipient. And I think at the end of the day, that's expected. Like you can't be looking unprofessional anymore out there. You'll just get blown off. People are just going to walk away from that so quickly. You got to be relevant. The creative has to be integrated. The message has to be clear. The process has to be simple, i.e., QR codes, for example. So those are the kinds of elements that you've got your kind of traditional direct marketing, creative, audience, timing, call to action, etc. A lot of those are the same, but there are some new things now, and it's about. I think you're bang on. It's about integrating and creating that journey that is almost seamless from one medium to the other. And so there are new features and angles, and that's kind of where working with an agency or an organization that understands those subtleties that will actually drive even a better impression with your customer.
And do you find that the customers that you work with, are they kind of already kind of there where they understand these concepts or benefits?
I think to a degree, I wouldn't say all of them, but I think, and it comes back to what your point earlier, is that almost that lost art of direct mail, where they know what they can do in their world, but they didn't know what we can do with our world. And so once we kind of have those conversations, you can kind of see those lights going off with everybody in the room, and and it doesn't take much for them to understand, because all you're doing is transferring. It's kind of a reverse transferal, because we've been doing this for years. You guys learned it in another digital aspect, but really it all comes back. It's the same thing. It's just a matter of repurposing those principles, right? And knowing, and once they realize that we can do just about everything, it's digital instead of physical, but we can actually reproduce a lot of that.
Yeah. And you're providing some of the technology layer too, right? So if someone doesn't have kind of the ability to leverage personal URLs or drive the data underneath it, you're able to stand some of that stuff up.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, we are working closely with a couple of different data sources right now. And I know, Lane, maybe you could describe that project you're working on right now. I think we have 2 of them going now, do we not?
Yeah,
or one's going and one's in the works, but.
Right, exactly. So, for acquisition of new clients, we're always looking at new ways. So there are some limitations when you think of email and castle compliance and things like that for targeting people that aren't your existing customers. So one of the things we're working on right now is called programmatic direct mail. So that's where there's some sort of external trigger. So it could be an action taken on a website, but basically there's some sort of online or in-store trigger that eventually gets into some sort of data format. And then we can integrate with a large number of these data formats to trigger out a very relevant and personalized direct mail piece, most often with the same day or next day of when this action is happening. So that's the production, that's all the data processing, everything that would be involved in the production standpoint, and the data creative is all done within a very short period of time, because we want to make sure that gets out into market as quick as possible, because these consumers have taken an action, they've shown interest in some sort of product or the brand, and we want to really get that out to them when they're in that cycle. So there's some really cool things we're doing in collaboration with Canada Post and some of their data sets and with our own data. One of them is where we're looking to geofence various locations throughout Canada. So one example is we worked with an insurance company, and we were able to geofence the sales areas of automotive dealerships in Canada. So as with permissions and privacy, obviously that's a concern. So this is all compliant. But we were able to do is watch devices as they cross onto that dealership, specifically in the sales areas of the dealership, and we're able to capture the postal code from those devices. So what we're able to do for privacy reasons is we don't know the individual, we don't know the household, but we do know someone in that postal code visited that dealership. So within 24 hours of someone visiting that dealership, we're able to create a relevant marketing piece for an automotive insurance product, because we know that consumer is looking in the sales area at potentially a new vehicle. So after visiting a dealership, they're going to receive this direct mail piece in their mailbox, and hopefully that will be timely to drive some action to get that quote on the automotive product and potentially convert into a sale.
And
So
in that example, is it the like the full code, like the full postal code, so they get it right to their door?
Correct. So it's the full postal
Okay.
code. Canada Post product that we utilize is called postal code targeting. So there's no name associated with that piece. It's strictly an address. And we're not mailing just one address. It would be every address in the postal code. So you don't know who in the postal code actually visited that dealership, but we mail to the entire postal code. So the postal code is typically 12 to 20 addresses that you'd be mailing to. It just allows you to target a little bit more granularly without going all the way down to that one-to-one personalized level, obviously for privacy reasons.
Yeah, and 6 to 20. I mean, how many? If you don't know who it is that you're targeting exactly, name, address, all the personal information, what other media can you get 6 to 20 and only 6 to 20 people? So that's pretty specific. That's very, very precise. So and as a result, quite cost effective. So that's an area of our business.
And to your point, you guys are saying it's triggered on some sort of, well, there's the action, but then you're saying within a 24 hours reasonable amount of time. So there's a lot of recall there.
Yeah. So I mean, go ahead, Lane.
As I say, that, I mean that's one example. I mean, we are really excited with that particular application because that's insurance, but what else can you do, right? So, if you're looking to target, maybe you're looking for pet owners. So how do you find pet owners? Are you able to geofence dog parks, to find out the dog owners, and we target people that have visited dog parks with a promotional piece for pet stores, for food and that sort of thing. There's just a lot of applications that we could potentially utilize to try and attract new clients through that. And again, it's laser focused. You don't have to mail 100,000 pieces. With the clients that we're working on with these today, it's 500 pieces a day. So it's a super laser focused, narrow mailing that allows it to be cost effective and increase your ROI.
So that's the neat thing about it, I think, is that's where we're using digital technology, the digital age, and we're following up with, which has great strengths. I mean, it's absolutely, we wouldn't know who these people were. How could we ever find them without the technologies that we have today? So fantastic. Let's use those. But one of the weaknesses of digital is its staying power, is its ability to leave a lasting impression, right? Strength of direct mail leaves a lasting impression. So you're really kind of integrating and putting these two technologies or mediums together in a way that takes the best characteristics of both to leverage the best possible response, right?
And that's one of the things that if you're not familiar with direct mail and really the capabilities, and you go to your mailbox and you see a postcard for auto insurance, you're thinking, oh, like everyone in my neighborhood is getting this piece. Well, potentially that's not the case. And if they are getting that piece, your neighbor's piece looks very different than yours. They could have a completely different offer, completely different creative, but but it's all done within one process. And the nice thing with the solutions we've built from a marketer's perspective, it's hands off. So, you work with our team, we create some business rules, and we set these workflows up ahead of time, but then it just runs. Same as digital would in the background, it just chugs, and the effort that's involved on a day-to-day is nothing. We take care of it all, and it just goes out.
So are these programmatic solutions, are they like a certain size organization that you'd want to kind of have engage on something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Not necessarily there has to be a bit of a commitment, right? So there is an upfront setup that would be involved to get these off the ground. So, and it's not something that you want to go and do one mailing and test. The clients we're working with today are currently doing about 500 pieces a day, and we're doing anywhere from 3 to 6 months sort of per campaign as a trial. So that's 3 to 6 months duration, 500 per day. That's sort of the size that you'd want to go after.
And just because sort of the tech side of it's like intriguing on this one, but I'm assuming there's control over somebody goes back to that location 5 times in a month or 2 or in 4 weeks or 3 weeks. Do they end up with 5 pieces of mail, or do you have? I'm sure you got stuff in there that
Yeah, so great question. So today, if we mailed somebody today, what happens is that that person would go into a suppression file. So and that could be variable. So we can say, okay, we don't want to mail this person again for 6 weeks, whatever that ends up being. So we keep them on a suppression file for that duration, and we remove them from every subsequent file or data that comes in.
Yeah, well, actually, we would have suppression. If I can jump in, we would have suppression files. So if they do actually respond to that piece, we can also remove them, right?
Correct.
So there's no point in preaching to the choir.
So we're doing a lot of things on the front end where even before this goes out. So it isn't 500 pieces a day of data that we're actually getting. It's much higher, but we're utilizing and mining the data to narrow it down to 500 people. So our clients that we're working with may give us suppression files with their existing customer data, because obviously they don't want to target existing customers. There may be different areas, like primary marketing areas that they have to stay within. It could be that they're not as competitive in other areas. So all that data we can overlay on the front end, and our system goes in and digests it and suppresses and purges and cleanse to narrow it down to the right target that you want to target. The other thing we're able to do, again, depending where the data is coming in from, there's different flags. So say for example you wanted to target someone that visited a Ford dealership in sales very differently than someone that visited Dodge, we may not suppress. So if we see somebody that came into Ford today and then next week they've gone in and visited a Dodge dealership, we may send them 2 pieces, but those 2 pieces may look different based on the data that we have. So we're really flexible, and again, that's all part of the setup. So we'll work with you, determine the needs of your campaign, what's relevant for your business, and then we'll build a customized solution that fits those needs. And so every program ends up being unique to the needs of that client.
Yeah, and I think another area where sort of a similar but different technique or application is where you've got abandoned shopping carts, right? So there's another perfect example, and in that case, you can actually get a lot more granular, and the customer probably, our customer, corporate customer, may already have permissions from a Casel's perspective to contact and reach out. So we're allowed in that case. So they'll be going ahead and maybe they'll be, hey, you left this in an email. You left this in your cart. Are you still interested? Here's X% or some kind of call to action or offer, right? But then to follow that up with a physical piece too, especially if it's a product that might be a larger ticket item where somebody's maybe thinking a little bit longer about it or they're not sure, but you could offer similar products to that on a one-to-one basis. So you could actually show on a postcard or whatever kind of print medium you want to use. But you can show, hey, here's what you selected. You could also get this, and this, and if you order by such and such time, 10% off, and that's just to give them that little extra boost out. So again, it's about integrating. It's about receiving data and then distributing that through an automated workflow and creating a compelling one-to-one marketing message to the potential customer.
I think in many ways, I think as probably you guys do more of these, and we think about opportunities to connect with marketers that you might just say are kind of like really digital marketers, even though nowadays you kind of just think of marketing instead of like digital marketing. Really, these individuals don't know anything or much other than digital, right? That's all they know. But what's cool about what you guys are describing right now is that all of those things, suppression lists, data quality, the ability to segment and target, and all these kind of controls that you would be able to do on your end is exactly what they're used to on the digital end to a large degree, depending exactly on the channel. But that's what I think is so kind of interesting, and maybe something that we build on is just around, the language. Like, yeah, you can do those things and you probably don't even know that you can do it, right? A great example around some of the abandoned cart type triggered comms or the acquisition stuff that you're doing. I mean, these marketers are trying to do this within digital platforms, so they're used to all the same kind of concepts and language that you're talking about. They're likely not aware that you can do that on the physical mail side of it. So
exactly, yeah.
There's probably a lot of education and just something we should think about, even talking to the marketing audience that we described that just may not be that aware of what's possible, and what's really cool about it is that if you've already got a framework that you're using on digital, you can probably just apply that framework. There'll be some little adjustments, but probably just apply that framework and bolt on the physical piece, right?
Right. And I think the other part of it, I guess the third part of it too, is, when you're running a campaign, so a LinkedIn campaign, and that's an area where we're kind of new to, and I imagine, Michael, that's something you're obviously that's your world, but I know that we're learning new ways of doing that as well. And we've come to Michael to help us work in that digital world for our own benefit as an organization. And so we're actually in the middle of a campaign, and I think Lane and Michael, you probably know more about it than I do at this point, but that's another, like I would. And this is an authentic question. This is the real deal. I really don't understand how LinkedIn campaigns work and how what we're going to do can integrate and work together.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's so interesting, right? Because a lot of what you're describing on the campaigns that you're running on the physical side, it's essentially what channels like LinkedIn are allowing you to do, right? So we want to define an audience. Maybe we want to upload some customers and suppress customers, or so I don't want them to get my ad, right? I want to have a certain piece of creative and a few different formats to that. The creative itself probably isn't as dynamic as you guys can drive off the back end of your environment, because this is still going to relatively, we can't get down to the one-to-one just yet in terms of varying creative, but you can blow it out into different audiences and create different creative off of those audiences. And what we're trying to work on together, I think, is we said, you guys already have that audience that you want to go after. We can certainly send them direct mail component, but let's actually upload that exact same audience into LinkedIn. Let's expand it with some other demographic targeting, so we can kind of round it out and get a decent amount of size in there. And then we're going to do two things. We're going to basically present a piece of physical mail creative to that individual over a 3-series campaign with a QR code to get to a landing page. But we're also going to present that same creative layout in a carousel on LinkedIn. So for the the amount of time that we're going to have that running is going to overlap with when they would receive that in the mail, and we're going to be able to really tell, where they responded from. But essentially what we're saying is, and I think it's kind of not going to get into like all the little stats and stuff like that I'm sure you guys will want to present down the road on stuff like this. But the idea being is that you've already kind of made that investment. So if you're a digital marketer, you've already kind of made a lot of that investment. So now to extend that investment into physical, I mean, you're leveraging tons, right? Yeah, we had to remake the creative a little bit so it would fit. But all the thinking, all the who are we going after, all the strategy, that's all done. And a lot of the creative is, you can malleate it into something that's going to work on both sides. You already have a landing page. You already have a way to follow up. So it's the same on the other side. If you're already going out with some level of physical campaigning, well, why can't we leverage that within a digital channel like LinkedIn? So the overall thinking there is that we're getting, hopefully getting crossover with whoever's getting our mail, and we're expanding a little bit beyond into people that aren't going to be getting our mail, because probably in both cases you can't target absolutely everybody, and track our response rate. So that's the concept that we've come up with together, and we're leveraging some Canada Post campaigning to do that. And
Yeah. So I'm curious, where does Facebook sit in all of this? In terms of what kind of targeting is Facebook capable of, and is that something? Because when you get into the kind of campaigns we're doing right now, it's more of a B2B type of thing, right? Because LinkedIn is primarily a B2B type of platform, right? But if you're going B2C, is there some way we could integrate that with Facebook?
Sure. I mean, we're definitely doing some content sponsorship on Facebook ourselves as Goose, because we have been able to define our audiences. We're not doing a lot of direct response. We're not really driving people to landing pages and trying to convert, but we have done that, and it's you got varying degrees of cost profile differences between the networks. Some of our B2B customers do quite well on Facebook, driving interest, driving leads. It kind of a little bit depends on, the demographic of your audience, right? And then the other side is the targeting. You have similar types of targeting, and it just sort of depends on what you're doing, whether or not you should be very granular. Facebook is really good at allowing the algorithm to do the work. So for a lot of our clients, where they're encouraging you to back away from the targeting and allow the fact that it has a pixel on your website, the fact that it can see your Google inbound, the fact that it can see other traffic sources, and just generally they're so vast, their data set, to allow them to find the people that they believe are best suited for you, versus trying to say, I want to go after this, and this. Now, again, there's a lot of learning that goes into that, but absolutely. I mean, I think that these are all just pretty cost efficient tests from a test perspective, to be able to go in and drop a few $1,000s to test something out and see how it's going to go for you over the course of a quarter, and then scale it up, right? Maybe less than that, depending on exactly how big the audience you're trying to go after is.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very interesting. And while we're kind of on that topic, I suppose what would be interesting is to take that to the next level in terms of, do we integrate with some other forms of media? So if you're going digital and we're going physical, where when do you go to more of a mass media? And because even mass media is starting to become more and more targeted.
That's right.
That might be another podcast altogether on that one, for sure.
Yeah.
But imagine integrating all three of those. I mean, I'm sure it's done. I know it's being done. You got to be firing on a lot of cylinders to make that happen, and for some organizations, that's absolutely worth it, right?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of education on, what's possible on B2C as well as B2B, as it relates to the direct mail component and joining or at least adding to your campaign mix. On the B2B side, there's probably a big gap in terms of like, well, how could you use this to connect with businesses? And you mentioned earlier that sometimes there's like a cost thing that if people, may be assuming that it's very expensive to try out a direct mail component. But I think really what it boils down to is a gap in outbound acquisition strategy. I think there's a lot more knowledge on how do we cream off inbound and how do we make sure that we're trying to position ourselves when somebody's in the market. There's less of a strong kind of experience capability in going outbound. And when you're going outbound, like you guys said, it's about what's our personas. Let's talk about those audiences. Where can we find them? Let's get a data source. So to me, if you're doing a lot of those things and you're thinking about, you're kind of already there as a marketer, and now you're just doing that on LinkedIn, let's say, or one of these other channels or in email, well, man, you might as well just bolt on a component from direct mail to bolster that activity and see how it goes, right? You've done 70% of the work already on that end of the spectrum. Now you're or 80%, now you're adding a channel in many ways, right? So I think that's kind of a big part of what we see is just a gap in the outbound. How are we going to get our message out there, right?
Right.
And that would be true even on the digital channels. So I think the more we can, it sounds like you guys do a lot of support and helping customers through that process as well. But to me, they're very, like you said, the five principles of direct mail that you brought up earlier. Those are probably like the 5 principles of marketing. And it's just about everybody realizing that it's actually marketing that we're trying to do, whether we're doing it here or there. You still need to be thinking about these things.
Well, and I think the point is that you need to be working with partners that understand that and can articulate that well to the people that make the decisions about making these investments.
Yes.
As well as understand how it all can work together from a mechanical perspective. Like, you don't need to educate your customers on how our back-end workflow APIs work and how this is even possible. They just need to understand that this is possible, right? And you can lose a marketer very quickly when you start to get too deep into, or any potential customer, when you start to get too deep into the quagmire of technology and that whole stack. So one thing we've learned is to keep it as high level and simple as possible, so that they can focus on strategy rather than and leave the technical implementation side with teams like Goose and Directworx that can really make that whole thing hum.
It actually just made me, I wrote it down, and we'll bring this up as we talk in one of our other sessions, but maybe we do I don't know if infographics are still like cool. I like looking at them, but something where you've got like an infographic that has, digital terms on the left and direct marketing terms on the right. And actually we just so you talk about like segmentation, and it's like, this is how you would do it in digital. This is how you would do it over here. Suppression lists. Yeah, typically you're doing it over here on email, or and as a way to sort of say, actually, in 2023, going into 2023, these things are a lot closer than you probably assume, right?
Right. Well, there's a mature and well-formed total industry that's sat behind all this for a long time. So we're all motivated to make sure that we find ways for today's marketer to get their message out. Whether it's almost gotten to the point where you've got really 3 channels now. You've got the physical digital, then you got the physical digital. So you got physical over here, digital here, and then there's a whole new channel, because it is very much, although everything that's old is new again, or everything that's new is old again, or however you want to put it. It's all about making those connections and driving the technology stack to achieve those 5 principles together, and also independently, right?
Yeah. All right. Well.
Yeah. Well. Thank you very much. Yeah. No, it's a good little thought process, and I really appreciate, Michael, you helping us out putting this together, and looking forward to many more of this nature and beyond. And
Yeah.
our relationship together has already been very fruitful for us, and appreciate you taking the time to help us put today together, and joining us at this podcast. And Lane, thanks for, I know how busy you are. Lane is a real brilliantly clever kid that we've had with us since, I think, before he even had any facial hair. And we're super appreciative that you took time out of your very busy day taking care of our customers to talk a little bit about our podcast, and I look forward to having you on a board with some future ones as well.
Great. Thanks. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Thanks,
All right.
guys. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Have a
Well,
great
thanks.
day.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for joining us for episode 1 of Let's Be Direct, the Directworx podcast. Have a great day, everybody. And if you want to reach us, by all means, we are at directworx.ca, or you probably might know who we are already.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.